All right. All right. So we could hand the. I'll stand somewhere. And I couldn't even. This was all prepared at 10 o'clock last night, so I couldn't even find my stapler. So these 2 sheets of paper. Some of you also I have individual sheets for as well. So. Oh, sorry. And none of it will make sense until I get started, right? But then you have one, Stephanie, and Jeremy. I had one for you, and it's not here, so I'll send it to you. All right? But it's I don't know. Here we go. Darren, where's Darren? That's what happened. Oh, you
spreadsheet job.
Oh, we haven't got the bio.
Yeah. Too early.
Who wants to read the bio?
I will. Okay, and Rachel, where are you going to stand?
I'll stand here.
Okay, okay.
And I'll get in case I need it. I might not need this.
How does a UK-born physics graduate become a creative writing coach in Australia? How does a volunteer teacher for Burmese refugees become a mentor to Fortune 500 executives? How does a mediation teacher and nun in the mountains of Thailand become a married professional helping entrepreneurs find their voice in the United States? How do any of us get from here to there? Rachel does indeed have a very eclectic past. She's lived in 6 different countries and tested out as many different careers as she has fingers. Her bachelor's was in physics. She always wanted to know how things worked. But in her 30s, after years of trying to gain enlightenment by contemplating her navel on mountains in India and Thailand, she struck off in a new direction, writing. She became a successful professional writer, contributing articles to major magazines and newspapers. She started teaching creative writing classes, and her spiritual mentoring gradually evolved to personal growth and story coaching. Her more recent introduction to soul contract numerology has somehow coalesced everything she does into one clear thing, unearthing that treasure that is the true story of your soul, your life lessons, your talents, your goals, and your soul destiny. She does this through a soul contract reading, which means decoding the numbers in your name. As a life coach and practitioner of soul purpose numerology, Rachel can hone in with precision on the issues supporting and blocking you and quickly clear them so you can be who you're meant to be and get on with your life's work. She's married to a jokester called Benjamin who has a wicked sense of humor. Doesn't have a dog, but vicariously enjoys walking the neighbor's dogs. She loves mountains, water, and sky, and if you don't hear from her for a while, you know she's out there in the big beyond, hiking or swimming or watching some awesome sunset happen. Something you don't know about her, she was a fire breather in the 2000 Sydney Olympics and nearly burnt some tall guy's butt in the process. Rachel Flower.
Wow. This guy was on stilts, and you know there was, yeah. So how long have I got? 50. Pardon? It didn't actually burn. I think he must have had some.
Did he fall off the stove?
No, he was cool. He looked back with a
It was pretty hot.
I did my best, like. It was really good. So, and I've got 15 minutes, is that right? And I get a warning at what point?
You have 15 minutes plus 5 minutes Q&A.
Oh, cool. Excellent. So, like I said, I probably shouldn't have jumped in, but I should this week because I wasn't able to get everything ready. So, I wanted to give you all a little bit of an experience of what this is because it probably sounds really weird. It's like, you may have heard of numerology. Some of you, perhaps, you know, you've had your name done in some form or another and there's just like one number. You know, it's like, oh, I've got an 8 or I've got a 10 or something like that. But this form of numerology is very different. I got introduced to it about a year ago and it started absolutely diving in, and I've done many levels of training in this, including business names and taglines and what they call overlays, which are names that you've taken on because you've been married, or nicknames that you got known by instead of your birth name, all that sort of stuff. But it's all energy, right? I know you're into music. Music is energy, right? We feel it. There's a frequency. when you say somebody's name, there's energy, there's a sound, it's a frequency. And we don't think about it much because it's just like a normal process, right? We're named, we come, you know, baby gets named, we get on with our life. Sometimes we like the name, sometimes we don't, and then sometimes people change their names. And I've heard of some amazingly successful name changes, and I've also heard of some disastrous ones, where people change their name and then things go crappy. You know, in England we say they go pear-shaped. I don't know what you call it, or they go to custard. And a friend of mine who I learned this from originally, and she's a mentor of mine now, she had a client that changed their name 6 times, and every time they changed their name, like some other weird thing happened, and it was not good. And you might think, well, it's just a name, it's just a label. But I want you to think about a name, and don't worry about all the details on this, it's not going to make any sense until I introduce some of the numbers to you. But it's just a label. You might think of it just a label, but I want you to think of a shop front. You know, the shop front is seemingly just a label, but if it's the wrong shop front, you're never going to go in. And some names, you know, like business names, have an energy that puts people away, and they don't come into the shop. You know, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the numbers that might do that. So where does all this kind of stuff come from? Like, where do the numbers come from? You've probably seen the Matrix, right, with all these sort of things coming down from the sky. And as a physics major, I know that everything is really numbers. It all comes down to math, okay? I think it was, if you took all the grains of sand and took 1 grain of sand compared to all the grains of sand in the world, that's the variation that you could be allowed, that all the equations of the universe would go wrong and the Earth wouldn't exist. If it was a variation of 1 grain of sand in all the billions and billions of them. Okay, so numbers are really important, but we just don't see them. We see the result of them. We hear the result of them. So imagine this, that before you're born, you have a sense of what you're going to be doing in this life. You've got stuff you want to achieve, there's things you want to do, there's challenges you want to set up for yourself. But what happens is, you have a name that you are going to then like broadcast to your parents. And they think they're thinking of a name for you, but really they're responding to you, telling them, hey, this is my name, I'm Mary, I'm Bob, or Robert, you know, I'm Victoria. And that frequency comes through, and sometimes it takes even until after the child is born for the name to be, you know, come through, because the parents want to see the child, right? I just was present for a naming of a baby recently through the numerology process, and you know, the mother was taking the time, 3 weeks, to actually figure out the right name for the child, and so she could see the personality of the child. So these numbers are really codes. The letters in your name are associated with certain numbers. This form of numerology that I do is based on the Hebrew language. We translate your name into Hebrew phonetic sounds, which is a very sacred language. It's very, you know, it's very connected language. You don't need to know how that happens, but the numbers that you see on this chart, and you can see my chart there, and I've got Jim's, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Jim's later, is that you end up with 6 pairs of numbers that come around like on a 6-pointed star. There's one triangle that represents your physical life, and one triangle that represents your more internal world, your spiritual life. And have you ever wondered why we go through midlife crisis? Has anyone not? I mean, I think we're all kind of midlife-ish here. Has anyone not gone through a kind of like a reorganization of your whole identity on some level? You know, you hit a certain age and you're going, what the fuck am I doing here, right? And everything's, well, what's going on is that this physical piece, the lessons that you've learned, the talents that you have, the goals that you have, that you can see in this triangle, you've worked through a lot of that, and now the internal, the spiritual piece is trying to come online. And if you haven't worked through some of the lessons and challenges that you're here to do, 2x4 will come along from the universe and say, hey, you haven't done this yet. You haven't explored your life lesson fully. Now it's time. Otherwise you're going to die with the music inside of you. So it's kind of a 2x4 from the universe and saying, hey, you've got this whole other triangle to explore. So what I do when I do a reading for somebody is that I have software that will do this for you. I don't kind of do all this calculation myself. I could if I needed to, if my computer was to break down, but it would take me about half an hour for each person. But the software pumps out these numbers for you, and you can see that, you know, you've got the 6 numbers around the outside, or 6 pairs of numbers, and then you have the one in the middle, which is the sum total of all of those numbers, which is called your soul destiny. And it's not going to tell you you're going to be an architect and you're going to, you know, have a Rottweiler and you're going to go around, you know, bashing people's kneecaps in, you know, as a Borelli. But it is going to tell you.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything, no judgment, no, never mind. But what it will do is tell you the flavor of what you're here to do. So, as you can see, you know, my soul destiny here is 16-7 in my chart. That's the sum total of all my numbers. 16 is about bringing intangible things, like spiritual things, down into a tangible level and teaching it. So that kind of fits, right? That's what I automatically started to do. And a 7 is about gathering people, bringing them in together, bringing, you know, attracting people. And 7s are really good numbers to have in business names for obvious reasons, right? Because you want people to come to your business. Now, you know, there's a lot of different things going on here, but usually when I do a reading, I will start with a number that's the life lesson number or the karmic number. And because that's usually what people are wrestling with, right? They have a certain issue that you're dealing with. I've got a 9, double 9 in my physical karma, which means a lot of disempowerment, a lot of challenges, a lot of, you know, me not feeling empowered. And so here I go off to India and Asia to study all this meditation because I felt something was wrong. I felt like I had a good family, I didn't have any reason to feel, you know, we weren't starving, we had a roof over our heads, I wasn't beaten, I don't have any dramatic stories like that. But internally I felt like I just was in the wrong place. I needed to be somewhere more sunny, which is why I'm here. I grew up in England. But to me, it's been a lifelong search for that deeper form of empowerment coming out. I've got a 22 in my spiritual karma, which 20 and 2 is a lot of conflict. And conflict, for me, wasn't external, it was internal. And again, here I go at 24, I'm meditating on mountaintops and going off to ashrams, because there's something up, you know, I'm feeling like there's something going on. So some of you have got 11 2s in your charts. I've got some of you that wanted your charts done, and you've got them in front of you. 11-2 is an interesting number because 11s are often, they can be hard work in the beginning, especially if they're in a life lesson. So some of you, if you've got 11-2 in a karmic position, it could mean it slows you down a bit, and you're wondering why my life is kind of dragging along. Why some people seem to be rushing around me and doing really well, and I'm just taking my time and I seem to be hitting walls. Well, the 11 and the 2 are all about moving from hardship to ease, and then also resilience. So you're developing resilience by having those numbers in that challenging place. Because if you keep working through it, you ultimately overcome it. And an 11-2 is not a bad number for a business. It's a slow start, but it ultimately goes exponential because you're building a strong root system. So, you know, you can see that there's a lot of information here. And I don't expect you to even begin to understand all of this, you know, in detail in any way. It's more just to give you the idea that we can decode these numbers. We can take a business name, which is why I've shown Jim's experience here. We've got his name here. Now we've got Jim's original name, birth name, and then his current name. We've got names of his businesses here. And these are what we call, in businesses, you don't end up with the same kind of karma and talents and lessons and things like that. For business, it's more, you have what we call a foundation, which is what clients see. You know, this is where this is like the front door of the business. There's certain numbers around that. Then you've got the success part of the business, which is the core of it, and this is what you deliver to your clients. And then you've got the results part, or the, what's it called here? Success foundation. Oh yeah, sorry, you've got the abilities, which is what you deliver to your clients. Then you've got the success, which is what your client, the results that your clients experience. So I was doing the numbers for Jim, and he was very graciously offered for us to see this, so you could see some of the process when I'm working with a business name or a tagline. And he sent me a whole bunch of taglines yesterday, or the day before, and the one that came up, you see optimum performance with time to relax. When I did the numbers, he's got a 7, 11, 2, and a 13, 4. Excellent numbers, really excellent. Because the 7s are all about attraction. So it means that he can attract a lot of people in the door with that. It's a loving, safe kind of feeling for people. The 11, 2 is a little bit of a slow build, but it's exponential ultimately. So it means it's solid. You've got some solidity there. He keeps working it, and he's already been working a number of years. So it's kind of like, you've already got the foundation, so hopefully you're on the exponential bit more quickly. And then 13 4s are all about, it's loving, it's actually got a slightly feminine energy, and not in a non-masculine way, but it's very balanced. It's very trusting. 4s are about trust. You want a business that people can trust, right? So having the 4s in there is a great number for trust, and it's also great numbers for teaching and replication. So for Jim, this is an excellent tagline, because I did the numbers on the Peak Business Coaching and the Summit Business Coaching, and they're not too bad, they're not amazing, but they're really quite good names, right? I think he's done really well with the name, because here we are in the mountains, and it's pretty clear, and you've got a great shop front, Jim, I know that now. But the other thing we want to have with a business is we want to have some number that's in the business that's also in your name, so that you are connected with the business. Have you ever heard of a company that gets taken over by somebody else, and then it goes crap? And part of that could be that there is a disconnect now between the owner and the name of the business. So, it's very interesting when you start deconstructing this. It seems a little woo-woo, and yet, on some level, what I've found when I've done readings for people is that it corresponds to stuff they know, and it validates a lot of experience. It might correspond also if you've had an astrological reading. You'll find it's very connected, but you might be seeing things from a different angle. But what also can happen, I often work with people with just looking at their name and how they use their name. One lady recently I worked with called Bev. Everyone was calling her Bev. We did the numbers on her name, and when she actually used her full name, Beverly, she was much more in her power. It was a much more grounded name. When we did Bev, she was kind of floaty, that the numbers were not, they were kind of a little off. And so she started a couple of weeks ago using her full name, Beverly. So it's not about necessarily changing your name, it's often about the way you use your current name. And she feels so different. She said that the day after, this was an amazing experience for her, the day after we did the reading, she had 5 major things happen in her business that she'd been waiting for that just were like logjam. Volunteers were calling. She had an investor come in and have a meeting, things like that. Now, results not typical, right? You're not going to get that every time you have a reading, but things will feel different. One guy I was working with last week, a wealth professional, had been struggling with his business name for months and feeling stuck, like he couldn't move through it. What we did, we looked at some names and we were playing around, and I do this remotely through the phone. I send people their chart and we'll work on it together. And we came up with a business name for his wealth management company, and we came up for a name for his role within that wealth management company. Instead of him trying to combine them both in this kind of way that just wasn't working, and the guy, again, it was like a release. You feel it. When you just get something just goes right. You hit the note, you hit the right note. we've hit the sweet spot, and there's this feeling of, wow, this is really cool. And he's feeling so different about his business. It's like something has been lifted from him, a burden. So many times we have an experience, we know this. We are very instinctive, but we override our instincts. And what I've noticed that's happening for me now is that there are names, sometimes I don't know about any of you business folks, but have you ever bought way too many URLs? You think, oh, that's a really cool one. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I'm not even going to tell you how many I have that I've never used. And I've started running the numbers for them because I can also run the .coms, the .nets, the .infos and see which is the best website. So we can run those numbers too. So I am not going to renew those websites, a lot of them, right? Because I can see the numbers aren't working. And so, I think what I've found is that my instincts are now starting to work better because as I go through more mentoring and training, I look at a name and I start to kind of connect more directly with it without even knowing the numbers, and I can get a sense of, oh, that feels really good. Something up with that, and then sure enough, when I run the numbers, there's an instinct that I'm tapping into. And I think we all have this in so many ways. You know how you can walk into a room and you can tell if somebody's angry? Or there's a vibe, right? Or you can sort of feel if something's not working. And we can tell if somebody's nervous. We can tell if somebody's really angry and they're not showing it. But we don't acknowledge it all the time. But we're very sensitive to energy. So I'm going to invite you to sort of really think about, if any of you also want to do a chart, I'm happy to give you a free experience, a little taster of how this works. So I know, Jeremy, I'm sorry I didn't get your chart with you, but your charts won't make much sense until I kind of interpret them for you. But there are certain numbers that, I thought I might share today. If you've got sixes in your charts, who's got sixes in their chart? Creative energy, very creative. When it's on a high energy, when we're working on the positive side, it means we've got a lot of creativity, we can get things done. On the other side, on the flip side of it, if we haven't really claimed that energy yet, we can be very scattered and frustrated and angry. So people with sixes in their charts often, if they're still challenged with those sixes, they could be dealing with anger until they start claiming their creativity and using it. So if somebody's got sixes and their life's not moving ahead, I'll say go to an improv class, go learn singing, go play the guitar, do something to open up your creativity. Okay. So whatever your name is and whatever the energies are, it's not, again, that you have to change it externally. It's knowing what's in there. You can then actually work with those energies. Somebody's got an 11-2, I might say, well, be patient, just keep at it. You're building resilience, it's okay. Other people may be going faster, but you're building something else. If people have got, I think other numbers that were coming up, sevens. Sevens are numbers that are about attraction, bringing people in. But if we're not claiming that seven, if it's in a karmic position and we haven't worked through it, we might end up hiding and feeling like we need to not show who we truly are, or have a facade out in the world and not really be fully ourselves until we can claim that number 7. Okay? Fives. Some of you got fives. 5, if it was in a business name, is not good. It's not good because it's very narrow niche. It's kind of a pioneering energy, and a lot of people can't relate to it. So that you might have a really cool name, a funky kind of creative name, and then nobody can actually relate to that because it's too narrow a niche for people. So it depends on your industry, it depends on what you want to achieve as to what numbers you want to. So how am I doing on time, Tori?
Well, we're at 24 minutes, but that was from...
I thought you were going to tell me.
No, sorry. That was from the very beginning, though. Very beginning, when I started recording.
All right, so I don't know. I just winging it, really. So I guess I've used up all my time. So that's it.
You can still do Q&A.
Questions? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
Oh no, we totally get it.
Yeah. You get
In 24 minutes, yeah.
Sorry, background number. I have no idea. Sorry.
So when you have a business name and it's established in your community for a number of years, and then you find out, oh, this is a narrow name and not working to your full potential, how does that affect you to say, well, I'm going to change that business name? How does that affect you out, the waves out from that of, okay, I used to be, but now I'm this?
Well, and if the business is successful, you don't need to change the name. You know, it's not like a fantastic name is going to do everything. You've got other things going on. You need good staff. You need recognition and things. So it's one thing. It's like it greases the oil, it greases the wheels, it helps things move along. But I ran the numbers for Apple. It's not an amazing name, but I think they've done pretty well. So it's not essential, but it's going to help it move forward. It's like working with Jim. He already had his name, Peak and Summit. He doesn't need to change that because it's not bad. It's just, it's not amazing. But then the tagline is going to help. Like it's like adding a really nice icing to a cake, and it changes it completely. So a good tagline. So you could change your tagline.
I see.
Or for me, with my name, I'm actually using Rachel Jane Flower as a business name because it's actually pretty good as a business name. And it's, as my name is more grounded than Rachel Flower. So I'm using my full name out there when I introduce myself, just because it's actually better for me. So I haven't changed my name, I'm just using it differently. So that's one thing. And yeah, you have to take all these things into consideration. You don't just go around flaky rebranding. Rachel said this is crap, so I'm going to change my name. Yeah, you know, it's not quite like that. But it's the more you know. I mean, I know people who have, as a relationship, they were having a horrible time, they did their charts, and then they could see what the challenge was in the relationship. And without changing their name or doing anything different, they started getting on better. Because they could see it. They could see the challenges. And so I'll work with relationships too, marriage, whatever, and I can look and I can say, oh, this is where you guys are having some issues, right? Or, and that, yes, it's true. You'll see it. So.
So when you come up with the numbers for each letter,
yeah.
Is that the same as numerology?
It's not English. It's very different. You'll notice the numbers are not like in the progression of our English
so
alphabet.
if I do mine in English, and Michael S. Dooley comes out to 8.
It's a completely different system.
It's a completely different system.
And this one is just what I found more precise. I've studied other forms of numerology. You get 14 numbers here, which is way more, you know, to play with and more dimensions to look at. And you know, it's just, there's a book, by the way, I've got it on the desk, called Your Soul Contract. Thank you, Bima. Your Soul Contract Decoded. And the guy that I studied with wrote that book. You can get it on Amazon. So if any of you are curious to know more about, you know, how this all works. I know it's a little woo-woo for some of you, like, whoa. But it works. I found it to be, you know, I've worked with enough people now, probably about 150 readings I've already done in the year that I've been doing this. So I feel, and I'm training constantly and getting mentoring in it. So it's very powerful, and it just gives me a starting place to work with somebody when I'm coaching them as well. It's like, oh, I can see what's going on, and let's focus on this. And I know you had an experience. Jim's the only one that's had in this room the experience of it. So, you know, yeah. Thank you.
Can I offer a little feedback?
Yes.
I noticed the most heads nodding when you made the connection between instincts and the energy that people feel when you walk in a room.
Yes.
That seemed like making those connections made the biggest connection for people around them.
Yes.
They're like, oh, okay.
Yes.
You see heads nodding when the other stuff was.
I know. And actually, no, thank you. I've never actually presented this yet publicly. I've done lots of individual readings, as you know, but I haven't actually talked about this publicly. So I thought jumping in is actually fun because then I don't have time to think about it. I just can do it, right? Exactly. So.
But your efforts to relate it to something that we can
you.
relate to, I think, is a good way to explain yourself.
Yes, thank you.
And I found it, I did find it very accurate. My situation is interesting, and just to be open, I was born James Ben and Ryan, and I was adopted. My mom got remarried, and I was adopted and changed my name to James Wayne Kaspari. So seeing some of the challenges that I've had in my life and how and what I've been through, and from 0 to 5, and then from then on,